Yeah, great title for a panel. So Dallas McClain, he is a multifaceted entrepreneur and visionary in the field of biohacking, health, and wellness. He's also the co-founder at Lifespanning Media Corporation, which is a prominent media platform specializing in health and wellness. So we are gonna let him run the show and introduce this amazing panel to you all and have fun.
Hey everyone, my name is Dr. Vincent Pedre. I'm a functional medicine gut expert. I've been doing functional medicine now for over 17 years. I have 2 best-selling books. My first book was Happy Gut, and I'm here actually representing my coffee line, Happy Gut Coffee, which is an organic, low-acid, toxin-free coffee that is good for your gut. Love it.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Dr. Yasmeen Nkrumah-Elie. It is such a pleasure to be in Miami. It's so beautiful here. I'm coming from Colorado. I love the humidity. We have none. So it's very nice. I am the Senior Director for an external research program at Niagen Bioscience, and we make the absolutely amazing dietary supplement, True Niagen, one of the most researched products out there. We have over 40 clinical trials supporting the evidence of our product, from all kinds of areas, from Parkinson's disease to rare diseases to long COVID to so much more. And I have the honor of being able to lead that research program. So very excited to be here today and engage in this conversation.
I'm John Titus, founder of Titus Unlimited and Unlimited Wellness. I am a health coach, and what I specialize in, I would say, is helping people with lifestyle habits to help reduce dependency on pharmaceutical drugs, like for diabetes, high blood pressure, and even some people helping them with chronic obesity. So that's why I'm here.
My name is Chris Renna. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I'm the founder of Lifespan Medicine. Lifespan was started in 1990 with the purpose of helping people achieve their health-related goals. And we've been in the business of offering comprehensive medical care and concierge services to an elite group of individuals for now 35 years. I'm on the right panel because I think that gut health is fundamental to achieving your health-related goals. I believe that the fewer pharmaceuticals you have to rely upon, the better you are, and I frequently recommend True Niagen.
Hi everyone, my name is Bob Troia. I'm a longtime technology entrepreneur and citizen scientist. And for the past decade or so, I've been using technology and data to track, analyze, and optimize all aspects of my health, longevity, fitness, performance, etc. And thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I'm Dr. Patrick Porter. I'm the founder of BrainTap. I've been doing this since 1986, optimizing brain function through research and discovery and just helping people on a mission to better 1 billion brains. And we track everything, so we're always looking for ways to upgrade. And we're a big believer in the brain-gut connection. You can't have one without the other. So we're the technology piece of it, but you need to work with the body as well. So.
Awesome. Thank you, panelists. So the topic of today's panel is truth in times of uncertainty. So finding truth in times of uncertainty. Today's world is so busy. So much is thrown at us. How do we know what to believe? Who do we know that can verify that information? And where do we go to get the right source, to get the pure information? So in all the chaos, amid all the chaos and misinformation that there is in the world, what timeless health principles remain reliable regardless of the headlines? And whoever has an answer first can take the mic and give us a 2 or 3 minute answer.
I think one of the most simple answers for people is keep it simple. One of the things I tell my clients is if a food didn't exist 100 years ago, don't eat it. All right? One of the main things we have to remember is that it's not the little tips that make you better, it's the little things that you're doing that's making you worse that's actually killing you. So stop poisoning yourself. Look at your food that you're eating. If you're eating too many things that have a list of ingredients, especially ingredients you can't pronounce, you don't know what they are, stop eating that. Eat more things that come directly from a plant and or an animal in its purest form. And if 90 to 95% of your diet is like that, and you're incorporating movement and proper hydration, you'll be healthier than 90% of people. So everything else after that is additional and a lot of times noise. But that's tested and proven.
Well said.
I think an important thing to know is that our biology hasn't changed for thousands of years. It's the same biochemistry, it's the same biology. What has changed is, as you're saying, our planet, the food, the toxins, the things that we're being exposed to, the overexposure to technology. Like, I like to remind my patients that we are biological beings that have a rhythm. You are not a smartphone. You have an on and you have an off period. You have a circadian rhythm. You need to honor that. You can't treat your body as if it is some sort of computer technology that never turns off. And I think that is part of the problem with our health right now. But truly, the essentials of our biology have not changed for thousands of years. We're just trying to master it. And the mastering of it is quite simple, like you said. Eating real food. Reducing your exposure to technology, like not getting overexposed to blue light, fluorescent lights. All of that are assaults on our nervous systems, and I think the biggest reason for the deterioration of health, and I've been doing this now for over 20 years, taking care of patients, and the number one thing I keep circling back to is stress, the effects on our nervous system, and then how that has a ripple effect on our entire body.
Love it.
I think I can summarize this for you. Now, I want you to think about two things. The first one I'll come back to. But truth is a degree of honesty that very few of us can bear. And I'll come back to that in a moment. People come to me asking for functional life extension at all ages. And what I tell them is that we all exist in two realms. And I think if you think about this, you'll see yourself in that same existence. We exist in a somatic realm, our bodies. And as our panel members have said, our bodies are primitive. They've been here a very long time. They're the vehicle that we use to have the experience that we call our lives. And we ignore them most of the time, other than when they call upon us to pay attention to them. And they call upon us to pay attention to them, our body that is, when we're hungry, when we have to go to the bathroom, when we want to have a somatic experience. The body is dependent upon diet, exercise, and sleep. And it is heavily influenced by your perspective. Perspective is your sense of self and place in the world. Diet is pretty simple, as all the panel members have learned and will tell you. It's whole foods organically grown and freshly prepared at home to guarantee the quality of the ingredients as often as possible. It's adequate hydration, using water as your main beverage. Sleep is pretty simple too. The Los Angeles Lakers paid the Stanford Sleep Center to tell them how long their players had to sleep in order to renew their bodies. They calculated it was 7 hours and 20 minutes. But remember, they calculated that for NBA players, elite athletes who were in their 20s. So what does it take a 45-year-old, or what does it take a 65-year-old to adequately heal? Actually, we can't heal by that point, which is the whole purpose of aging. But in order to restore ourselves as much as possible, we at least need to hit that 7 hour, 20-minute mark. Exercise is movement. You don't have to belong to Equinox. You can just move. But I will tell you that resistance exercise plays a very significant role. So if walking is all you do, you're going to have to incorporate 20 minutes of resistance training twice a week. This is for your body. It's not where you live. I'm going to tell you where you live in a moment. But you live in your perspective, and that's where the interface between the body and the mind exists. The mind is an electrical hologram that was created in utero by an inseparable interaction among neurochemicals, immune chemicals, and hormones. And that makes neurochemistry, immune chemistry, and hormones very important. And it makes it important throughout your entire lifespan. That's your mind. Your mind is the superstructure that depends upon the body as its foundation. And that's where we all live. We've all been in the cloud of our thoughts, what we're going to do, where we're coming from, how much time we have, are we on time, are we late, do we have to do anything, how do we look? The only times we paid attention to our body today is when we had to sit in an uncomfortable chair, or when we got a little winded walking up the stairs, or when we dressed ourselves and adorned ourselves. We looked at the body at that point in time and said, oh, I got to do something about that, but later. Our mind is where we live. And we should live in our minds. That's the source of our creativity. It's the source of our pleasures. It's the interpreter of all that we perceive. The truth about ourselves, which I said earlier is a degree of honesty that's difficult to bear. The truth about ourselves is not what you think. And Patrick can tell you more about how you think that and why you think that. But there are parts of your brain that produce thoughts and ideas and values that were inculcated at 5, 15, and 30. And no matter how old you are, the decision-making process that you go through most of the time is influenced by your 5-year-old self, your 15, and your 30-year-old selves. And they all have very specific roles, and they all have a very specific point of view. They all wanted something at the time that you decided those things were important. So what can we do to stay healthy? We have to pay homage to our bodies, eat, exercise, sleep, maintain a healthy perspective. Listen to Patrick's talk about brain tap and about brain reconditioning. Think about limbic retraining. Look it up, see what it's about. And think about what I said with regard to the 5, the 15, and the 30-year-old being on the board of directors who are helping you make your decisions. I'm sure you'll all have a better life for it.
One area I think that is really important that we're all talking about is that when we are not sleeping enough, when we're not eating properly, when we're not taking care of our health, when we're sedentary, our cells are crying out for help. And one important aspect of what our cells do and how they function is NAD. And it's nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. I'm not asking any of you to memorize it or be able to pronounce it by the end. But NAD is essential to our cellular health. And when we say cellular health, that means our tissue health. And when we say our tissue health, that means our organ health. And our organ health means our whole body health. And so when we are not eating enough or we're not eating properly, if we are not exercising, if we're living a sedentary lifestyle, if we have too much blue light, if we have all of these environmental factors that are part of modernization impacting us, our NAD is out there fighting like a boxer. It's fighting too much sunlight, it's fighting poor diet, it's fighting not enough sleep, it's fighting too much alcohol, it's fighting all of these environmental stressors. And so we want to make sure that we're boosting our NAD. And there's natural ways to do it. Healthy diet, fasting, boost your NAD. Exercise is boosting your NAD. But for many of us, unfortunately, we aren't able to do all of the things and deal with modern life's stressors at the same time. So supplementation is one of those areas that you can start to consider and think about. We have an amazing product there, but I want you to think and know that your health starts with your cells, and everything you're doing, your cells are fighting for your life. So let's protect ourselves.
I just want to make it real simple. Everything they said is right, but really breaks down to two things. Are you a pessimist or an optimist? If you're a pessimist, your body's going to downregulate. Everything you do is going to be less. They've already proven this in epigenetics. If you look at life as a threat, it doesn't matter what you do. You could eat the world's greatest foods, you could exercise and do whatever, your body's going to downregulate. If you're an optimist, look at your life as a challenge, face the challenge and do it, your body's going to upregulate. You're going to show up as your best self. Number two, we don't all have to agree to everything because we're on a board up here, but longevity studies show 6.5 hours is the average it takes to sleep, because you need 1 hour of deep sleep and 2 hours of REM sleep. It's not about time in bed. We did our study with the coal miners. The average coal miner spent 10 hours in bed. 1 minute of deep sleep, no REM. They weren't sleeping. They were in bed. You have to learn to sleep efficiently, which means you have to have a sleep protocol, all the things that they're going to tell you about, those are really important. But the reality is, if you're not unwinding the nervous system, Tom Brady, who's one of our advocates for BrainTap, he says for every 1 minute of exertion, you need 2 minutes of recovery. Most people think recovery is laziness. It's not. You need recovery. You need to give yourself permission to do nothing but unwind your nervous system, which means daydream. Don't do anything. Now, of course, if you have BrainTap, I love that, but you don't have to have BrainTap. You can do breath work. You can do lots of things. But just you have to start doing the simple things, because it's not what you do every once in a while, it's what you do daily that's causing the problem. So you have to include these things into your lifestyle. And of course, diet, you cannot think of bad diet, like they're saying. You need and I'm a big believer in supplementation, so I'm not saying replace these things, but think of the framework that everything flows through, your mindset. Now, you might have to, this group is probably optimistic thinkers and challenge. You wouldn't be here if you weren't, so I'm kind of talking to the wrong group when I say that. But, when you go back home to your family and friends and they're saying, this is bullshit, what are you doing? This is crazy. Why are you doing this? You're going to, and I always say, don't worry about the pessimist. Longevity studies show they live 6.5 years less. So just cherish those 6.5 years they won't be around, and you'll be all right. So there you go.
Bob, did you want to say anything?
I feel like everyone's pretty much hit on every talking point I would go through. I mean, all I'd add to it is that, yes, I think a lot of, even what you're seeing at this conference, all the exhibitors and everything, we're largely trying to offset what modern living is throwing at us. Like, we're trying to keep our heads above water. So, I mean, whether something looks like a supplement or something more like woo-woo or whatever, they're all there for a purpose. And I mean, I approach it from this aspect of, my mantra is that strong beliefs loosely held, meaning like I'm kind of stuck in my ways a little bit, but convince me otherwise, and I'm willing to keep an open mind. Like, so if something you don't believe in it or it looks weird, like give it a chance, or read the studies, look at the science behind it, and you might realize, well, yeah, it's working for me. Or it could be a supplement that maybe doesn't do a lot for you because maybe your physiological state is at a different level than someone else that really needs it more than you do. So I just feel like, keep an open mind to everything you see here this weekend.
Well said. Yeah, that kind of leads me to my next question, actually. So in today's world, there's so much information thrown at us, as I was saying, and a lot of products and brands that we see that are on the edge of innovation and bringing new things and new paradigms to this space. It's great to see, and all this creativity, but it's also something that should maybe make us aware, keep us aware of the fundamentals that we have, the values that we hold to, and what's true and what's right, and what's real and what's not real, what's just a good marketing budget and what's a good actual product. So we try to do that through some of our products and brands that we work with and whatever that we do by vetting them. But the average everyday person that's maybe outside of this space, how do they look for what red flags can they turn to, or what type of metrics can they look at, can they analyze that will maybe give them a good signal that maybe this isn't the best product or device for them?
The reason that we use HRV, most of you probably have Apple Watches, Whoops, or Rings or whatever. Look at your HRV. If you're not getting an uptick in what you're doing, stop. I always tell people, try something different. If it's not working, you can always go back to what doesn't work. So you have to experiment on yourself, and you have to have a good measurement. HRV is one of the best. That's why we developed NeuroCheck, but there's a lot of good devices out there. Find one and stick with it. And you have to test everything, because just because it works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Test it, and it's not that it's bad. It just doesn't work for you. And be willing to, and really then look at not just your HRV, but what's your sleep score, because it should always affect your sleep score. Sleep is when you incubate your superpowers. So if you're not increasing your sleep score, forget what you're doing. It's not working. You spend a third of your life sleeping, hopefully you're somewhere around there. So you can do more biohacking. You do more neurological function while you sleep than when you're awake. But if you're not sleeping, you're not getting all that neurological activity. So those are two measurements I always tell people.
I'll go back to what I initially said. Keep it simple. Okay? Keep it simple. A lot of times when people have issues with their health, Our society now tells us, look for something to add. And what I always tell my clients, and full disclosure, I own a supplement company, but I don't talk to anyone about any supplements until we master the basics. So what are the basics? Keep it simple, all right? Before you look to add anything when you have a problem, look in your lifestyle to see what's causing you your problem, okay? We know what the basics are. We need food, we need water, we need exercise, we need sleep. Are you optimizing your food, your water, your exercise, your sleep? In your food, what's poisoning you? Take that out, okay? Are you moving enough? If not, move. All right? Are you drinking enough water? Because without water, guess what? You can't move nutrients around. You can't even detoxify your body. And last but not least, I should say this is the first thing, your sleep, as he said. Because in our sleep, that's when we rest, recuperate, regenerate, repair. That's when your body does most of its work. Rest, recuperate, regenerate, repair. If you're waking up at 8 o'clock in the morning after sleeping for 8 hours and you need coffee to get you going, right? Well, coffee's not your problem, all right? So you need to find out why you're not getting enough sleep. Fix the basics, all right? Next thing, the 3 things that make us sick: overexposure to toxins, nutritional deficiencies, chronic inflammation. All 3 of those things can be solved with pretty much the same action. Take the bad stuff out of your diet, put more good stuff in your diet, move. And once you do all that and you start sleeping better, now we can look at your supplements, because the supplement is just that. It is a supplement. Like you said earlier when we were talking, it's 80-20, okay? Fix the 80, the 20 will work itself out. And then you can actually find, like you said, what works, what doesn't work.
Going back to misinformation, there's so much out there. And I do love a citizen scientist. I have a PhD. That doesn't mean that I know much more than anyone else. But I do love that people are out here trying to learn from themselves. They're saying, you know what, we're going to go ahead and start biohacking. I'm going to figure out what exactly works for me. I'm going to be an N of 1 and figure this out. Well, when there's so much information and there's companies out there that are piggybacking on the science of other companies and not putting, what's real into their products, it gets really frustrating. And I think consumers deserve better. We need to have like a trust alliance where for a lot of these products that we're proving, there's science behind them. But then there's also clinicians who are saying, we support this too because we see the evidence in the clinic. And so together with the science and the clinic and then the passion of the people, I think we can start to move things forward. But we do have to figure out a way to get rid of the noise and all of the misinformation, because it's out there. And unfortunately, it can hurt people. And so to be able to protect people moving forward, to look towards health span, to look towards longevity, we have to be able to decipher through. And so I challenge all of you to say, you know what? I'm not going to be afraid of the scientific literature. I'm going to maybe look at that abstract and read and see what it says. And if I don't understand it, I'm going to take it to my doctor and say, can you help explain this to me? And would this be good for my body and my condition? We're moving into a space of personalization for medicine, personalization for nutrition, personalization for exercise, personalization for our brains. And so we have to be the advocate for ourselves, for our families and our children. And we can't be afraid of the information that's out there, but we need to make sure that we're learning what it means and then shutting out the noise.
So I should explain the 80-20 comment that Jean alluded to. Before we came to the panel, we were talking about what difference does it make? What difference can you make? And what I said to him was, when I started Lifespan Medicine in 1990, it was a 90-10 deal. 90% of what I would advise people to do were lifestyle changes that they had read about and heard about from the time their grandmother was telling them not to eat that until their most recent articles they read in the New York Times. They knew all about it. The truth, which was hard for them to face, was they weren't able to do much about it. So I would see them coming to me and paying me handsomely for the 10%. They wanted the tricks. They wanted the exact time they should spend in the infrared exposure, or they wanted the best infrared program, or they wanted the best helmet. They wanted the best halo. They wanted to know what was the best supplement. Is it NAD or is it NMN? Or is it NR? NAD is the queen, and NR are the bees, and NMN are the bees, bringing the resources. I know I'm talking biochemistry, and some of you are getting left behind. NAD helps you make energy. It's an enzyme that helps you make energy. The whole thing about aging and a great deal about health is about the utilization of energy. But that's too big a subject to get into right now. Let me go back to the 80-20. The 80-20 deal is that with all the modern advancements we've made in science, 80% of how healthy you are, how long you will live, and what your health span will be. My wife and I argued about naming the clinic Lifespan. I said we should name it Lifespan. She said you should name it Health Span. But if I name it Health Span, nobody's going to know I'm a doctor. She says they don't need to know you're a doctor. They'll know you're a doctor later. Like after they come to you because you named it Health Span, they'll know you're a doctor. I said, no, I gotta push the doctor deal. Okay, she was right. She was right. But now the name's half as old as I am, so it can't be changed now. So the thing that is going to give you that health span, what's going to help you feel better tomorrow or the next week or the next month? It's what are you eating and how are you eating it? It's how much are you moving? It's how well are you sleeping? It's not the length of time you sleep. It's how well you're sleeping. And what's the metric? There was a shift in medical education about 1995. If you look at your doctor and you think that that doctor went to medical school before 1995, that doctor is going to pay more attention to you and let the lab work substantiate what he or she thinks about you. If the doctor looks like they went to medical school after 1995, they're going to look at the lab work. And they're going to use the lab work to judge you. And if the lab work says you're hypothyroid, they're not going to ask you about your symptoms, whether you're hypothyroid or not. They're not going to ask you to take your first morning temperature to see if you're resting temperature. They're just going to give you thyroid. There's no better lab test that I have. With all the 500 lab tests, you can buy 500 lab tests from Mark Hyman's panel and get all these biometrics about yourself. And all that stuff will be very fascinating to you. There's no better lab work than how do you feel. You feel okay? If you feel okay, the lab work's not nearly as serious as somebody might make it out to be, no matter what it is. And if you don't feel okay, don't take the lab work as reassurance. So how do I eat? How do I feel after I eat this? How do I feel after 3 shots of tequila? Good for a while. Until you have to metabolize that, until the toxic burden. Okay, so it's about how do I feel? How can I sense my way through this? People say to me, what kind of diet, what are you basing your diet recommendations on? Okay, we base our diet recommendations on lectin chemistry, but that's a subject for another story. Why? It's because that was the most medically oriented program we could find, and I thought it was better than just telling people over and over again, eat that and see how you feel within an hour after eating. If you feel better an hour after you ate, you can tolerate that food. It did not trigger an inflammatory response in your gut. If you don't feel better an hour after eating, if an hour after eating you want to go back and eat more, you want cookies, you want ice cream, it didn't work. You got to look at the contents of that meal. If an hour after you exercise, you don't feel much better for having exercise, you might not be doing the right exercise, not the right workout. I'm gonna let go of the microphone. I don't want to take the whole time, but that's the 80-20 deal. 80% is up to you, and you can find it on your own. You don't need to pay anybody for it. You can read it, you can sort through it, and you can use the laboratory test of, well, how did I feel after I did that? Just some things you may have to give a little more time than you might think in terms of judging its effectiveness.
Yeah, well said. Would you like to say something, Doctor?
Hey, I went to school after 1995. I was in medical school. And I can tell you that my approach is that the patient is right, not the labs. But however, if the labs look normal and the patient is telling me that they don't feel well, then perhaps the correct lab hasn't been drawn yet. And just because the labs are normal doesn't mean that there isn't something that's wrong. It's just that you haven't looked under the correct stone. You have to turn over all the stones and look for the place that has been missed. And that's what I do in my practice, because normally when patients come to see me, they've already seen 5 other doctors. So they've already had a ton of tests. So the question I'm asking is, what was missed? Where did they not look? And I have to have a little bit of a contrarian point of view on the idea of people listening to themselves, because a lot of people are stuck in the Bermuda Triangle of their brains, and they are confused by the infobesity of the internet. They are being pushed in so many different directions that they are lost. And they need a guide. And sometimes, sometimes what I feel like as a medical doctor is I'm more of a body whisperer, telling the patient what their bodies are speaking to them, because the patient doesn't know how to listen to their bodies. And I'm teaching people how to listen to their bodies, because they don't realize that when they eat wheat, it's causing their brains to get foggy. They're not making the connection. Or that dairy is weakening their immune system. But they just don't have that refinement. They just don't know where to look. So not everyone knows how to listen to themselves. And one thing that I'm always teaching my patients is how to listen to their bodies in a way that is fine-tuned to understand what is it that is really happening here. Because there is so much confusion and there's so much just misleading information. And I will say that some of the people who are misleading or providing the misleading information are other doctors, Western-trained doctors that will give nutrition advice when they got 1 hour of nutrition training in medical school. If that. Yeah, so I wanted to speak actually also towards the consumer confusion, because there are things that they can look at, like consumer reports. There are companies that test supplements. For us, with our coffee, we send our coffee to a third-party lab that tests it for mycotoxins, pesticides, glyphosate, and heavy metals, and we post those on our website. There are other companies that will say they do this, but then you can't find the results on the website. So that's one thing that people can do to get through the confusion. But the problem is that a lot of people don't realize the little micro habits that they are doing every single day that are damaging their health. Like going to Starbucks and getting that coffee in a to-go cup, that when that hot coffee hits the microplastics, the inner plastic lining of the cup, it's sharing off little microplastics that you're going to drink. And the research now is showing correlations between exposure to microplastics and inflammatory bowel disease like ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. But also, the research is showing that it causes alterations in the gut microbiome. It shears the mucous membrane, the protective shield right along the gut lining. It's like, imagine like a medieval castle has a moat. Our gut makes a mucus layer that protects it from invasion from the combination of good and bad bugs that are in the gut. So it's breaking down those mucus layers that allows for the gut barrier to start breaking down. And then that causes leaky gut, which leads to the common underlying cause for every single disease on this planet: inflammation. Inflammation coming in from the gut, which is command central for the immune system. So there's a lot of things that people just don't realize, that we are walking through a minefield of things that are basically hurting our health. The microplastics, the pesticides, the farm-raised fish, all of that. So as much as people can listen to themselves, I think we need a lot of education to empower people, to teach them what is it that you have to pay attention to, and what is right underneath your nose that you are doing every day, those little micro habits that are actually damaging your health.
So I agree with Vincent. There's no disagreement. Pre-95, post-95, not at all. Because he's not typical. I'm not typical either. But nobody on this panel is typical. In fact, none of you audience members are typical. Typical is waiting in line at Starbucks right now. But when listening to Vincent, I thought, well, that's kind of scary. What do we do about it? And what he told you in the beginning was what to do about it, and that is, don't drink out of plastic-lined cups. Try not to drink out of plastic containers. And that is a deal on microplastics. Remember the 80-20 I told you about? At Lifespan, we contract with the plasmapheresis company because we don't want to do that kind of a technical procedure on our own. We don't want to trust it to our own nurses. So we use a global plasmapheresis. Plasmapheresis is where they take blood out of your arm in a continuous flow. They filter it, and they filter out microplastics. They're filtering out mold toxins, filtering out a lot of junk, a lot of toxins that your body has a very difficult time getting rid of, and putting the blood back in the same continuous flow. And one of the big things we do is test microplastics and PFAS, which is forever chemicals, before and after the sessions to demonstrate to our clients that this is worthwhile. That company's making a fortune. We don't charge anything for it. It's a pass-through because they charge so much we can't really tack anything on. But they're making a fortune because we're all so toxic burden. Okay, that's more scaring you now. But we shouldn't just scare you. We should tell you what to do. And Jean-Baptiste told us what to do. Keep it simple. Don't drink out of plastic stuff. Drink out of glass. Get an osmotic filter and drink out of that tap instead of the community tap. When you go to your doctor, look to your doctor for sick information. What they teach us all, whether it was in my generation or Vincent's generation, was name that disease, know that therapeutic. It's like a quiz show. And they rewarded us for passing the test that asked us to name that disease and know that therapeutic. And the guys and the women who knew the disease and knew the therapeutic made A's and got honors. And the rest of the people were like, huh? What was I supposed to do? Oh yeah, that's right. Name that disease, know that therapeutic is sick medicine. It's not wellness. It's not what Vincent does. It's not what I do. It's not what Patrick does. You can look for a doctor. The kind of terms are integrative. Integrative is probably the most reliable term right now. Is your doctor an integrative practitioner? Functional. Functional is key because it comes from an institution that started in 1990 called the Institute of Functional Medicine. They trained us all to understand what the biochemistry of food really meant. We got no education in food. We got no nutritional education. UCLA was going to ban their nutritional education course in medicine and physical exam course. They were going to abandon both courses. And the board of directors said, we don't have a nutrition course to abandon. We never had one. Let's just focus on whether we should do physical exam or not. Again, I don't want to dominate this, but the idea is that all of us should, if we're going to tell you something scary, we should tell you what to do about it. We shouldn't just make you scared. We should tell you what to do about it. And so far you've heard it, and it's been a common theme. Quality food, prepared at home so you can guarantee the ingredients. Adequate hydration using water as your primary source. Movement, if not exercise. As you get older, you enter the hormone abandonment phase between 45 and 55. You got to do resistance exercise.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, for the sake of time, I'm just going to move on to the next question, but thank you for that answer. This is getting a little more personal into each of your lives here. As entrepreneurs, big in the wellness space, the medicine space, and speaking engagements and all of that, you guys are probably traveling a lot more than just the typical person and everything, and have a lot more engagements and a lot more things to prepare for. So what is the one personal practice that you come back to, or one habit that you help incorporate into your daily or weekly lifestyle that really centers you in the midst of all the busyness of the world?
Sorry.
Whoever wants to start.
I mean, for me, it's the connection to nature and getting into nature in whichever way that I can. When I come to Miami, it's putting my feet on the sand, hopefully within minutes of arriving in Miami, because it grounds. Being next to the ocean, you get the negative ions. But if I'm not in New York, just getting into nature, because nature actually reduces our cortisol levels. They did a study where they found that if people were in a park, in nature, just 30 minutes, 3 times per week, it actually lowered their cortisol levels, their cortisol response. So I think it's very important to connect with nature because it reminds us of our biology. We can connect with that part of us that is not technological, and it has a very grounding effect. So that's part of my habits that keep me grounded amidst the craziness of travel and this world.
It's a great one. Yeah.
I guess for me, it boils down to things like lift heavy things a few times a week. Just you have to maintain muscle strength, and you know, especially as you get older. I love putting my body through extreme, so sauna, cold plunge, incorporate breath work. I feel like those are both stressors, as well as gives your body more resilience, as you know, in addition to other recovery modalities, things like brain tap or using tools like PEMF or you know, et cetera. So for me, it's as much as you want to train and push your body, you need to give yourself that time to recover, especially as we get older. And you know, when I landed here, the first thing I did was I went to the beach, wet sand, and just made, you know, grounded. Was in the sun for a while. Just, you know, make sure you get out in nature. I think all of that is, you know, we're trying to replace nature oftentimes, but when you can get to it, you know, obviously nature is going to be the best thing you can do.
I constantly am thinking about how I can actually boost my NAD, which is more than me just being a scientist in this space, but because that's what I do, like, and breathe every day. And so I know that I need the exercise, but I also, for me, I'm a social person, I'm an extrovert. And so that means that I'm going to connect with people. And so I started a walking group that we walk at 5:30 in the morning because I was like, I need the social aspect to come in with the exercise, and I want to engage in community. So for me, like, the best way is to, you know, engage with the community. And while I'm out there, I'm talking about health and hopefully educating and encouraging others. And then the other thing that I like to do is actually get really good sleep. And so making sure that I'm prioritizing sleep, that I have, you know, the best environment, which now means that my husband sleeps in a different room because he snores. So I get the best sleep that I possibly can.
And for me, of course, I use Brain Tap, but I'll talk about the other things that we do. One of the things, when I travel a lot, like this weekend, we're in 4 events, and I'll be speaking at them. So even though I'm here today, I won't be here tomorrow. I'll be at other events. And so I fly a lot. I don't eat when I fly, number one. I just drink water. I always fast. At least usually only 1 meal a day when I'm on the road. Sometimes I'll do 2 meals because I've got to go out with somebody, because your body doesn't need as much food as you think. I always prepare. I always stop by the store because you can always make excuses to eat bad food. I did that. And those that know me, you saw me 40 pounds heavier last year. And I said, I got to stop making excuses. So you got to plan for success or you count on failure. And you got to be committed. You got to commit to yourself that even though you got to make the tough decisions, because you got to do what you need to do till you can do what you want to do. And it's easy to make excuses when you're successful flying around, making a lot of money, which we've done. And that money is not going to matter at the end of the day, because you can't buy health. You can live health and you can live a healthy life. And you're hearing it from these guys. You cannot think of bad diet and all the things they're talking about. So you got to start there. And, you know, and just think about, like, taking away things. I think that's a key point. You know, I stopped drinking coffee first thing in the morning because it kills the cortisol trough. We proved it in science. So if I do have a coffee, it'll be in the afternoon or it'll be after 10 o'clock in the morning. You don't need coffee. You heard it in my talk. If you've got to have coffee in the morning, you've got a bigger problem, just like we're hearing here. So just do the simple things and you'll find that they'll maximize, because it's not what you do once in a while, it's what you do daily. That's what you have to look at.
So I'm going to say the same thing I've said before, and I want you guys to repeat this after me. 3 words: keep it simple. All right? Keep it simple. You can only be successful with things that are sustainable. Find sustainable habits that build you and don't break you. all right? So, for instance, my pretty much daily routine is I don't have an alarm clock, but I usually rise somewhere between an hour or so before the sun actually, crests, all right? I stretch, I drink water, I go down, I do anywhere between 5 to 15 minutes of a cold plunge, I do anywhere between 300 to 500 reps of a workout resistance training, and I walk and or I sauna. I do all that before I open my phone, check an email, or anything of that nature. All right? Past the hour, about 8 o'clock or so, first of all, I don't have any fluorescent lights in my house. All right? But the lights go down. The lights that are in the house, they're on the other side. All right? Those things are sustainable habits that anyone can do. How many people here are over 45? Basketball fans? Basketball fans? Remember, everybody knows Michael Jordan, right? Remember that commercial back in the 80s? It's not the shoes, Morris. Huh? With Spike Lee, it's not the shoes? Right. It's the basic things. The shoes are not going to make you Michael Jordan of health. All right? People were dunking and touching backboards like David Thompson in 1970 with flat Chuck Taylors. All right? Will the fancy things help you? Yes. But as we both have alluded to, it is the 80%. Okay? And it's the things that you do on an everyday basis. So take yourself back 100 years. I love 100 years ago. Right? Put yourself back 100 years ago. If you can spend more of your time in a space that's like that with what you eat, your lifestyle itself, at nighttime, turning off the lights, cutting off the Wi-Fi, doing those things like that, you put yourself in a space where your body's now prepared to be able to maximize that 20%. And then when you start to look at those additional things, those added things, those things may work a lot better, but they won't do much for you if you don't master the basics. And what are the 3 words again?
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
I interpreted the question a little differently, but I wouldn't disagree with anything anyone has said. In fact, I think everyone on this panel has come to very similar conclusions from different approaches. But the way I interpreted the question about when times get really tough and chaotic, what can I rely upon? It's gratitude. Gratitude orients you to optimism, as Patrick said earlier. Gratitude lowers your cortisol level. Each of us have something to be grateful for. If I were in a 10 by 6 cell and I was going to spend the next 5 years there, I'd be so happy I was alone. It might be hard for me to remember that at the time, but at some point in time, hopefully I'll remember that and think, yeah, that's right. And I have a window. It's being grateful for whatever it is you have, and whatever it is that you're afraid of that you would someday have that you don't have. That those things you haven't had yet. That's what I would rely upon. And yeah, there's a formal practice. All of the things that we're going to talk about are practices that we talk to our people, the people who come to us for advice, all of us. We talk about these same practices all the time. And what I know is they're really hard for you guys. They're hard for me. Like what John Batiste just talked about sounds ideal. And I tell people that all the time. I say, wake up, work out, move on. Because if you don't work out as soon as you wake up, you're not going to. I tell people, okay, that's tough. Wake up, work out. You got to take the kid to school. You got to get him ready. You got to get the other person. You got to call your mother and bring her Vincent's coffee. Remind yourselves of all the things for which you are grateful. Don't confuse busy with stress. Busy was what you wanted to be. Busy is what you get to be now. It's not I have to go to work, it's I get to go to work. Think about if you didn't have a job, how stressful that would be. Don't confuse busy with stress. Confuse busy with success. Tell yourself the truth about yourself, not the truths that your 5, 15, and 30-year-old want you to believe or they still believe. No. You're great. You did all this. You got this far, and you have so much more to go. And the future's going to be better than the past. Just be so grateful for being here now and for all the things that you brought with you and all the things that you left behind. You've done a great job.
Well
Remember
said.
that.
Vitamin G. Would anyone else like to add anything? I think we're short on time, but quick response.
90 by 90. Own the first 90 minutes of your day. Try to make it work. Okay? If you can't allot 90 minutes for yourself out of 24 hours, you have a problem. Okay? But imagine dedicating 90 minutes of every day, first thing, to you and your health, to you and your mind, to you and your betterment. All right? That's an hour and a half every day. That's 10 hours a week. That's 40 hours a month. That's upwards of almost 500 hours in a year. How much better would you be 1 year from now if you put up 90 minutes every day? 90 minutes. And just master the basics in the 90 minutes. Meditate, stretch, move, prepare your food. Think about your day. Be grateful, all right? But own that 90 minutes because that is the best of you. That's when you're supposed to have the best energy. That's when you're most awake. You give yourself the best of you before you give anything to anyone else. And then once you do that, that 80% becomes easier. You master that basic, and then we can talk about the 20. But not until you master that basics and own your first 90.
Well said. All right, well, I think that concludes our panel on a great note. A round of applause for our panel, everybody. Thank you.